There are many, many words written and spoken about non-duality, and I certainly have to hold my hand up and admit that I am guilty of adding many words, both in speaking and in writing, to the great mountain of what has been said and written about non-duality. But at its heart, what we are talking about here, what we're writing about in other places, is utterly, utterly, utterly simple. And it can be summed up in so few words. The heart of non-duality is that there is no self. There is no self. If non-dual seeing means anything, it means seeing or noticing that there is no self. If those difficult and somewhat weaselly words, enlightenment, liberation, even awakening, mean anything, then again, the core of that is there is no self. There is an utter simplicity there. It is utterly, utterly simple. It is simply the noticing that there is no self. That is non-duality. There is, of course, a problem, and the problem is that because there is no self, there is no one to notice that. We could say that because there is no self, we cannot notice that because we do not exist. The whole point is there is no one here and there is no one there who can notice that they do not exist, that their selfhood is non-existent. It sounds like a terrible, terrible paradox. It sounds excruciating to the mind. In fact, the mind can really tie itself up in knots about this. It can tie itself up in knots for years. So what's being said here, and it may sound hopelessly paradoxical, it may even sound contradictory, but I promise you that it isn't, is that there is no self may be seen, and it can be seen, but it cannot be seen by me. It has not been seen by me. It cannot be seen by you. It will not be seen by you. Nevertheless, the very sense that there is someone sitting here looking for non-duality, liberation, awakening, enlightenment, whatever we want to call it, the very fact that there is someone here looking for that and that there may be someone there, I don't want to make assumptions, but the very fact that there may be someone there looking for that, looking for non-duality, right, that very experience may simply collapse. And if that experience collapses, then what's left? Then what is there? If that experience collapses, then what is left is simply whatever's happening, is simply everything that is simply all that there is, whatever is arising in oneness, whatever is arising is in emptiness, and whatever is arising in emptiness does not contain a self, will not contain a self, cannot contain a self, because the self does not exist. So if we ever feel confused about non-duality, befuddled by all the things that are said and spoken and the language and the disagreements that go on between different speakers and the arguments about whether there's path and practice or no path and practice and all of that, in a way, It can all drop away. It's all gloriously irrelevant. It's all gloriously simply the monkey mind doing its own sweet, confusing thing, the monkey mind that does not even exist, but which appears to exist nevertheless. We can forget about all of that. What we're talking about here is something gloriously and outrageously and utterly simple. It defies all logic. It defies personal experience, or it defies what seems to be my personal experience, because there is actually no such thing. It defies common sense. It defies everyday experience. It defies all of that. And yet, when it's seen, it is utterly unavoidable and completely incontrovertible. There is no self. So if you are perhaps unwise enough to be drawn into a discussion or conversation or even an argument in a pub or a bar or a cafe, you know, with some friends, or even, heaven forbid, a stranger who wants to know what this non-duality thing is that you're into, it's probably best to avoid these sorts of discussions if you possibly can. But if you absolutely can't avoid them and you want to keep it simple, or it's a good idea and not to go into any of the complexities, but if you want to keep it simple, then you can just point that out. You can just say that. You can just give that description. What is non-duality? It's the seeing that there is no self. And if you're lucky, that should bring the discussion to a grinding full stop. And everybody can then get on happily with drinking their beer and talking about politics and football and religion or whatever else might be on the agenda. So I'll leave you with that. This is an utterly simple communication in spite of the numerous complexities that may seem to hang off it. If awakening means anything, if liberation means anything, if non-dual seeing means anything, it is the seeing, the realization, the direct apprehension that there is no self. So I'll leave you with that as I struggle to find the stop button on this recording.